Sakura is an ugly, repulsive loser who is barely able to stay on a tightrope. Students talk about how he recently got into another fight and how he is nothing but trouble. Even the parents talk about how dangerous he is. Everyone believes he's too dangerous to look at, which is understandable given his lack of interpersonal skills. They criticize his look, citing his refusal to tint his hair black. Even the color of one of his eyes is off, which they use to conclude that he must be cursed. Everyone thinks he's disgusting, and the boy eventually falls off the rope. We then meet Sakura for the first time. He explains that he prefers the powerful and doesn't care about the weak. Some guys around are harassing a female and asking if she wants to go somewhere. She wants to break some eggs over their heads, but that would be a waste of wonderful eggs. The guy advises her not to act so arrogant, and he prevents her from leaving. Sakura then reveals that what he despises the most are weak individuals who believe they are strong. Sakura intercedes with the gang of harassers, telling them that it's too early to be acting that lame. The leader attempts to attack Sakura, but he is one of the types that Sakura despises the most. Sakura easily dumps this guy and wonders what's going on in his head to make him believe he's powerful when he's not. Sakura asks that they memorize his name and face so that they may warn all the vulnerable people they know to flee when they see him. Sakura is a psychopath, as he also wants them to know his name so that they may inform all of the strong people where to find him. He declares himself to be Sakura Haruka from Furin High School. Sakura walks away from these jerks, but the girl stops him to express her gratitude. Sakura is perplexed and wonders if she's talking to him. She verifies that she was, and Sakura makes it plain that he didn't do it to help her. He just beat those people up because they irritate him. Sakura denies her invitation to eat something, but she feeds him anyhow. She can tell he's not from this town, and it's unusual for anyone to come here. She says that the group he had just fought has been causing a lot of trouble, and the town's public safety has become non-existent. She acknowledges she is not from this town and introduces herself as Takabana. Sakura is perplexed as to why she is being so friendly since most people would be terrified of him, especially after he just beat up 5 guys. Sakura reluctantly consumes his food when she asks him to, but he is astounded by how delicious it is. He wonders if her restaurant takes off, but she corrects him because the dummy is attempting to say takeout. Takabana points out that his eye and hair colors are all off, and he wonders if she is bothered by it. She is more amazed than anything, but the paranoid Sakura believes she wants to fight. Sakura is astonished because most people are turned off by his appearance and insist that he dyed his hair. Sakura argues that appearance does not matter in a fight, which is why he came to Furin. Furin students are noted for having the lowest marks, but they are also the strongest fighters. These are the students who fall through the cracks at other schools and win themselves at Furin. Every day, factions fight to see who will come out on top. Their passion for fighting is so strong that they even fight on holidays, and Sakura is determined to become the top dog. Takabana reminds out that this is a lofty goal, but Sakura reveals that in actuality, he is as dumb as a stone and just understands how to fight. However, nothing sounds better to him than competing for first place, and this location is ideal for him. Takabana quickly realizes why he's in uniform even though school doesn't start until tomorrow. He's excited. Sakura, ashamed, explains that he had just relocated and didn't have anything else to wear, but she teases him even more. Our boy Sakura, as usual, resorts to fighting and insists that the disagreement be taken outdoors. Just then, one of Takabana's senior customers nearly forgets his to-go bag until Sakura reminds him. As Sakura walks home, he considers how bizarre the entire incident was. The elderly man handed him some candy and encouraged Takabana to thank him. Sakura is unaccustomed to receiving so much adulation, so he refers to the entire community, including Takabana, as odd. He points out that he is wearing a delinquent school uniform, and his appearance is also weird. It does not make sense for anyone to thank him. Normal people would be wary of him and unlikely to trust him. Sakura once picked up someone's wallet, which they accused him of stealing. Takabana then says that while Sakura made the right decision in coming to Furin, he will never be the top dog. Surprisingly, she claims that he may not even beat anyone there, let alone be top dog. Sakura points out that she has no idea how strong he is. She acknowledges that he may have great muscles, but stresses that he will not be able to become top dog. The difficulty is that he is completely alone. Sakura grows enraged and screams that he isn't so weak that he needs anyone else to win. As he leaves, Takabana adds that she is not referring to physical strength. She suggests that he go meet some Furin kids, as he will understand. A group of hoodlums is causing havoc nearby, and a poor lady cries for rescue. Sakura runs into the earlier group, and the leader is taken aback by his presence. He calls our boy Furin trash, but Sakura simply ignores him. The commander explains that he did not forget his face and mocks Sakura for his appearance. This guy is taken aback when he finds this is Sakura's real hair and eye color. They assumed he was merely doing some bad cosplay, but he points out that being real is even more disgusting. Sakura smiles, as this is the expected reaction to his appearance. This is the disgust he has grown accustomed to, yet it is acceptable because he has given up on that end. Sakura, on the other hand, still wants to believe that he is valuable. If he can defeat the person in front of him, he will feel superior to them. The trouble is that Sakura can't quit thinking about how Takabana informed him he wouldn't be the top dog because he was alone. The leader proclaims that his gang will wage war on Furin because Sakura punched him. But Sakura isn't paying attention. He's still focused on Takabana's words as he hits the leader again, and he declares that he isn't the one who avoids people. Sakura expresses his honest views regarding his appearance. It does not make sense how people behave. He understands better than anyone that he appears strange, but he has never done anything to those who offend him. This is simply who he is. Sakura begins hitting down on this large gathering of thugs. He believes that as long as he is the strongest and finest combatant, he will be the top dog. There is no connection between being alone and this. The gang tries to assault him all at once, but it is ineffective because Sakura is considerably more skillful than them. Sakura immediately engages any opponent who approaches him, and the combat is surprisingly one-sided, despite Sakura's numerical disadvantage. Just then, one of the thugs kidnaps Takabana, but he pays the price for this reckless move when Sakura knocks him unconscious. Takabana expresses gratitude, but Sakura reiterates that the goons only irritated him. They attempted to use a knife, but he instructs the idiots to keep the battle clean. One guy tries to sneak up on him, but he ends up learning an important lesson. Sakura repels even more of them, but he is hampered by the need to stay in one location to guard Takabana. He questions why he is defending her in the first place and reminds himself that helping others never ends well. Sakura continues to defend herself, but one of the attackers eventually uses the knife to slit his leg. Sakura is in a tough place right now and wonders why he doesn't defend people. He wonders again why he decided to help her and prepared to take a bat to his skull. Just then, someone interrupts the onslaught, and Sakura notices that the stranger is dressed in a Furin costume. This guy unexpectedly stopped the bat with his back and warned Takabana not to notify anyone that she was in danger. This guy kills the bat wielding and informs the punks that they have caused a huge mess in this community. When his companions come, the guy is enraged and informs the gang that they are in serious trouble. Backup has arrived, but they are dismayed to see so few opponents, as they did not all have to come to battle. Sakura is in complete amazement, unable to comprehend why Furin is protecting him. The thugs are afraid to meet Hiragi, but they are convinced they will prevail because they outnumber them significantly. Hiragi instructs the others to make quick work of these people, and they begin to completely smash them. One of the guys attacks Sakura, and Sakura is trapped in a bad situation because his leg is immobile. Hiragi protects him again and instructs Sakura to step aside if he is injured. Sakura is enraged, pointing out that he is not his employer and explaining that the goons are his to fight. Hiragi simply instructs him to cease moving around because it makes it difficult for them to protect him. Sakura is utterly taken aback, and he glances around to see that the entire town is rooting for the Furin brothers. Sakura can't believe what he's hearing, and Takabana reminds him of how she mentioned the town's public safety was almost non-existent. However, this was only true until 2 years ago. Everything changed thanks to Furin's students. The first thing they did was place a notice board near the town's entrance. It states that if someone causes trouble in their community by injuring people or property, they will be the ones to purge them, regardless of who they are. Takabana explains that somewhere along the way, the town's residents gave the Dread and students a new name. Because they fight to safeguard a town, they are known as the town's Bofurin, Windbreaker. After the fight, the entire village comes out to thank the guys. The fan pupils, once considered as low-grade hoodlums, are now well respected in the community. They still battle a lot, though. They are adored by everyone, and most importantly, they are needed. Sakura is astounded by how different this community is, as the combatants are treated as heroes. They appear to be thugs, and they fight often, but no one is terrified of them. Sakura is overcome with emotion, and he is surprised when the town's residents tell him that he did an excellent job holding on his own. A small elderly lady even tries to tend his wound, but Sakura can't handle it and asks that everyone stop. Takabana calmly begins tending to his wound, reminding him that she told him he was alone. However, she admits that she could see immediately away that he wasn't choosing to be. She can't quite figure him out, but she does explain that the people in this town require his strength. Sakura is overwhelmed by everything that is going on, so he declares that he does not need anyone and refuses to get involved. However, Takabana is eager to point out that his behaviors convey a different message. He reminded the old guy of his bag, and he fought hard to protect her. Takabana points out that he hasn't given up on people, and he doesn't need to. At the very least, she says that she will not turn her back on him and requests that he turn towards her as well. Takabana feels confident that this is the path that will lead him to his desired outcome. Sakura is still unable to absorb anything, so he dashes towards the others. He leaps into the air, pointing out how the delinquents appear to be playing hero now. He concedes that becoming the town shield sounds really amazing, and he completely destroys the gang's leader who is terrorizing the community. Everyone is shocked, and Sakura wonders if anyone will actually remain by him there. We then discover that this is the narrative of how a low-level person who only knows how to fight became the town's hero. Sakura eventually arrives to Takabana's restaurant, enraged that she has to carry old Grandma Sato around. She's afraid she'll get wounded getting off his back, but he simply urges Granny to speed up. Grandma Sato surprises our son with her dismount, and he is unhappy because she told him her hips hurt so much she couldn't walk. The old lady expresses gratitude, but Sakura is still unsure how to respond to such generosity. Takabana stops him from leaving and offers him some lunch because today is his entry ceremony. It's still early, so she concludes that he is eager to start school. He denies it, but she perfectly understands because there are so many interesting personalities at Furin. Just thereafter, a child named Nairi comes, falling flat on his face. He wonders how Takabana feels about his new uniform, but Sakura tells out that he still has the tags on his jacket. Nairi removes all of his clothing tags, and Takabana informs Sakura that they will be in the same grade. Nairi observes Sakura's odd hair and eye, and Sakura suspects he has an issue with them. Nairi is taken aback by his attitude and concludes that Sakura must have had a difficult childhood due to his constant worry. Nairi seeks to understand out why a nobody like Sakura has come to their community. Sakura is offended, but Takabana reassures him that Nairi is like this with everyone. Nairi passionately emphasizes that Furin High is no ordinary school. Members of both Furin rose up to protect the people. They defend the weak and defeat the wicked, making them heroes of justice. Everyone who comes to Furin admires them and wants to help safeguard the village. Nairi is one of them, yet he wonders why someone with no ties to Furin, such as Sakura, has come to their community. Sakura makes his objectives obvious, revealing that he is there to grab the top position. Protecting the town is excellent, but there are a lot of powerful individuals here, and Sakura simply wants to be the best of them. Nairi becomes serious and advises him that he should not mention things he would never be able to do. His reason for expressing this, however, is that he is concerned Sakura would go bald. Sakura has had enough of his little comedy routine, so he insists they fight. Although it is late, Nairi must go since he intends to conduct 3 rounds of town patrol before the admission ceremony. He announces that he will be a hero of justice beginning today, but as he walks away, he demonstrates his clumsiness. Takabana comments on how amusing the boy is, but Sakura cannot believe a nerd like him wants to be a hero of justice. Takabana is astonished to hear Sakura comment on someone else's appearance, but Sakura meant that males like him are the kind that always back out of battles. Nothing is lamer to him. Takabana claims that is only an assumption, but Sakura reveals that he has seen it a number of times. Takabana then pauses to teach him something. She observes that the coffee fruit is a very different hue than the coffee beans she keeps in jars. The lesson is that if you only look at things from one angle, you'll never perceive their true form. She believes he should not make such rapid conclusions and encourages him to get to know people better so that he can determine what they are truly like. Sakura genuinely absorbs this crucial information, but he assumes she means Nairi is a good fighter. Takabana is dissatisfied, wondering whether he only worries about fighting. Sakura remains certain that he is correct even after he has left. Just then, he is stopped and given some complimentary bread. He's perplexed, so the baker explains that fearful children are often helping out around town, and he simply wants to give back. They recognize Sakura as the person who stood up to the gang the day before and note that everyone is talking about him. Sakura does not know how to receive praise and leaves, but they insist that he bring some sandwiches to lunch. As Sakura walks throughout town, he notices that several other people share his sentiments. Sakura has no idea what's going on and wonders what's wrong with everyone in town. They're being far too friendly to a guy like him, but Sakura sees he was only anticipating they'd treat him horribly. Sakura is astonished when a girl asks him for help. Nairi is assaulted in an alley after preventing a man from pestering a girl. The guys simply mock him for believing he could protect the town, and they say that he is the one who requires protection. Nairi tries to ask them to return it, but he only gets shoved around. The lads are astonished when Nairi declares that individuals who create pain or harm in the town would be purged by Bofurin. The guys all chuckle and point out that only guys on superhero shows talk like way. The leader becomes irritated and declares that it makes no difference whether Nairi is a windbreaker. He is the one who will be purged. The person prepares to assault him, but Sakura arrives just in time to save Nairi. Nairi is taken aback and wonders why Sakura is protecting him, but Sakura barely notices him. The bullies laugh because Sakura is there to help his friend, but Sakura is offended by this. He admits that it is not true, and he despises weaklings who believe they are strong. Sakura declares that it makes him sick, prompting the bullies to demonstrate their abilities. Nairi is concerned for his safety because he believes Sakura will be unable to fight them alone. But there is no need to worry because the guys are all knocked out seconds later. Nairi is amazed that he dealt with them so quickly, and he wonders who Sakura is. Nairi is afraid of him now, but he thanks Sakura for his assistance. He is certain that Sakura is disappointed that someone like him is in Furin and attending Furin High. But Sakura just states that he was not saving him. Sakura refers to him as a typical pretender and cautions Nairi to be aware of his own limitations. Nairi explains that he was always beaten up in middle school. One day, he was saved by someone from Furin, who he would typically be afraid of. However, at the time, the person seemed quite cool, and Nairi aspired to be like him. Nairi comes to Furin to become just as wonderful, but he breaks down as he finds he is simply pathetic. Sakura reflects on how he imagined Nairi was the sort to back down in battles, yet it's evident that he stood up for himself. Sakura informs Nairi that he is a weak fighter, but there is a chance he isn't completely lame. Nairi is stunned, and the girl he saved approaches to thank him for standing up for her. She also praises Sakura, but he wants to leave. Nairi stops him again and takes out his small book. He bombards Sakura with inquiries about his height, weight, blood type, and hobbies. The child goes crazy examining Sakura and taking notes on him. Sakura interrupts him, so Nairi explains that he simply enjoys gathering information about guys he likes and thinks are cool. Sakura simply tells him to do whatever he wants, and Nairi uses this as an invitation to observe Sakura up close and personal. Nairi offers to tour him around and discloses that, while he may not be useful in a fight, he is the finest guide for the town and its inhabitants. Sakura is astonished when Nairi declares that he can guide her all the way to the top. Nairi must then persuade Sakura to move on, but he is preoccupied with eating because he becomes quite hungry after fighting. Sakura is blown away by how amazing the bread is, and Nairi becomes engrossed in it as well, but he remembers they need to get to school. The two ultimately arrive, and Sakura is excited because there will be a lot of people like the boys he met earlier. Nairi finds the class roster and is happy to discover that he and Sakura are in the same class. Nairi is impressed by the other names on the list, but he doesn't know them personally. They are simply people he admires. Sakura does not believe it is important who is in their class, but Nairi reminds out that they will be spending a lot of time with these people. Just then, Nairi is taken aback by one name in particular, and Sakura points out that he has lost all vigor. Nairi eventually gets over it and begs Sakura to be kind to everyone in class, encouraging him to smile at them. Sakura assumes he is joking, but Nairi informs her that members of Furin banded together to safeguard the town. Sakura is not from there, therefore the males will be upset, and they will question why he came to Furin. Nairi believes it will be critical to demonstrate that Sakura is innocent and not Furin's opponent. Sakura, on the other hand, isn't listening since he's warming up. Nairi wonders why, and is surprised when Sakura answers he's just preparing ready for anything. Nairi is disappointed that he did not listen and reminds out that as an outsider, even a minor misunderstanding may turn the entire school against him. Sakura doesn't care if everyone turns on him, and he tells Nairi that he is there to fight his way to the top. Sakura enters the classroom, and Nairi is startled to notice that everyone is staring at him. The class is full of tough-looking students, but Sakura couldn't have asked for better. One student recognizes Sakura, but Sakura immediately raises his guard. Nairi apologizes and recognizes the student from his book. Nonetheless, the student claims to be Leonardo DiCaprio. Sakura falls for it at first, and Nairi had no idea this cold-faced dude could be such a jokester. Nairi knows his real name is Suo, and Suo claims that his eye patch keeps an old Chinese ghost in his right eye. Sakura loses his rage when he learns the boy is only talking, but Suo becomes serious and approaches Sakura. The situation becomes tense as Nairi thinks that people from out of town are being treated as abnormalities. Sakura prepares for a fight, and Nairi is concerned that there may be no way to stop it. Just then, he is surprised when Suo pats Sakura on the back and thanks him on being the star of the main street brawl the day before. Suo tells to the other pupils that before Hiragi came at the brawl, Sakura was the one protecting the community. Nairi was unaware of this, and the other pupils began to gather around Sakura. There were speculations about an unknown student wearing their uniform. and they are pleased that this individual did a wonderful job assisting the town. They're a little too near for comfort, but Nairi decides that this is preferable to them turning on Sakura. It's evident that they won't consider him an enemy, so Nairi relaxes because the person he dreaded earlier should be fine with Sakura as well. The boys still don't understand why he came to Furin in the first place, so Sakura explains that he came for the top spot. They're all astonished, so Nairi tries to explain that Sakura isn't there to hold them down and beat them up. Sakura claims that he is, but his new friend advises him to let him handle it. Just then, a table is tossed, and it's a terrifying student. Sakura shows excitement on his face, but Nairi urges him not to attack this guy. He is the most dangerous student in their class, and possibly the most dangerous in the entire school. His name is Kyotaro. Sakura declares that he prefers battling mad dogs like him, and Kyotaro threatens to destroy him. Kyotaro delivers a hard punch, but Nairi is taken aback when he finds Suo has swiftly moved him out of the way. Sakura dodges it as well, complimenting Kyotaro on being the type of person he anticipated to see in Furin. Kyotaro becomes even more agitated, but this is exactly what Sakura had hoped for. Suo is hyped that things are heating up, but Nairi wonders what he finds amusing. Suo informs Sakura that made a mistake by insisting that he'll become a top dog in front of Tsujishita. Tsujishita suddenly launches a surprise attack on Sakura, but he dodges it flawlessly because Tsujishita is moving at 0.5x speed from his path. Tsujishita has been visiting their school since middle school, and he is the only one who was given the privilege of calling himself Bofurin before officially starting the school. Tsujishita keeps attacking Sakura, but Sakura keeps dodging flawlessly. Suo informs Sakura that Tsujishita worships the top dog so much so that he earned the nickname of the top dog's fanatic. Tsujishita tries a low attack to take down Sakura, but he dodges it easily. Suo keeps edging them on so they continue the fight, but his classmate advises him otherwise. Suo mistakes his advice for a change of commentator, but his classmates tell him they want the fight to end so outsiders don't get hurt. Tsujishita tries a power punch, but he only catches air. Sakura dodges his punch spectacularly, teasing him about punching his aftershadow. Sakura suddenly launches a kick that catches Tsujishita squarely on his jaw, hurting his nose. Everyone is shocked by this. Sakura continues making fun of Tsujishita, teasing him about being a fanatic and not having the brain capacity to think for himself. Sakura is surprised that people think that Tsujishita can beat him when he only has enough ick to follow orders from someone else. Sakura and Tsujishita are still facing off in front of the spectators. They are about to resume their brawl when a voice suddenly comes out of the announcement speakers, which stops them in their tracks. The speaker tests the microphone first, but then he gets confused wondering if the speaker is on or not. A director informs him that the speaker is on, and he loudly welcomes everyone to Furin. The direction informs him that he's talking too loudly and warns him to lower his voice so they don't get noise complaints. Sakura is pissed that he got interrupted when the brawl was just heating up. He urges Tsujishita to continue their brawl, but he notices that everyone has become zombies who are somehow commanded by the voice from the speaker. Sakura wonders who the speaker is, and the speaker introduces himself as Hajime, Bofurin's primo. Sakura realizes that the speaker is the top dog of Bofurin, and he's hyped that he can finally get to know about the school's strongest student. Everyone listens attentively, waiting for the announcement Hajime is about to make, but he suddenly tells them he has forgotten what to say. He advises them to enjoy their youth to make up for his short-term memory loss. He advises them to live a life that matters and make a lot of memories since they are in high school. He informs them that they'll be hitting the beach during the summer, and he advises them to grab some shaved ice. Nairi wonders what use shaved ice will be, but Tsujishita suddenly pounces on him, wondering if he has a problem with it. Nairi suddenly tells him he has nothing against what Hajime said. Hajime knew they enrolled a lot more students than usual, and he informed everyone that they may not all be carried along with the school activities. He hoped that the population density wouldn't lead to a fistfight on the first day, and he advised the students to get along. Nairi escapes Tsujishita's grasp, and Tsujishita uses this opportunity to wipe the blood from his nose to hide the fact that he was in a fist fight. Suo informs him that he can't hide his guilt because everyone saw him fighting. Hajime informs everyone that it's important they defend the town because they were given the name of Bofurin, which obligates them to protect people and their property. He tells everyone that the announcements are done, and he tells them to get some lunch. Sakura wonders how everyone was able to pay Hajime so much attention even when he wasn't in the room. He realizes that's the kind of thing a strong fighter earns. Suo suddenly comes in between Tsujishita and Sakura and advises them to make up with a handshake. Sakura refuses to apologize to Tsujishita because he threw the first punch, but Suo informs him that he can't hold such things to heart if he wants to become a top dog. He asks Tsujishita what Hajime would think of him if he told him he was involved in a fistfight. This thought makes Tsujishita hold his hand out for a handshake with Sakura, which surprises Sakura. Nairi urges Sakura to shake his hand as quickly as possible. Sakura decided to shake his hand, though it felt weird because he hardly touched people outside a fistfight. They both crush each other's hands, gritting their teeth aggressively, but Suo was happy their youth was blooming. They both release their hands from the handshake and Sakura's classmates suddenly surround him. They commend him for landing a hit on Tsujishita and they praise his flexibility while landing the kick. Sakura realizes that people have been so nice to him since he moved unlike previously. His classmates suddenly notice he's quiet and they wonder if they choked him to unconsciousness, but he informs them that he can't be choked out like that. An older student suddenly informs them that they're going outside. Sakura is so pissed they have to go outside after just entering the building. The senior tells them to head over to the schoolyard and a Hiragi scolds them for taking so much time to come outside. Sakura recognizes Hiragi from the previous day when he saved Kotoha at the cafe. Hiragi suddenly rushes at Sakura and drags him out of the crowd. He scolds him for failing to keep the fact that he saw Kotoha the previous day a secret, but Sakura is more pissed that Hiragi is spitting on him. Hiragi informed him that if others heard that Kotoha was in danger, it could lead to several unfavorable occurrences. He urges Sakura to keep his secret and not tell anyone about the events of the previous day. He threatens to begin coughing unpleasant liquids if Sakura fails to do so. He informs Sakura that he registered under an overpowered general and Sakura is surprised by this. Sakura returns to the crowd and Nairi asks him about the confrontation, but he tells Nairi that nothing happened. Nairi wonders what kind of person Hiragi is, and Sakura informs him that Hiragi tends to stress himself unnecessarily till he gets a stomach ache and has to take drugs. Nairi notes this down, which seems weird to Sakura. He informs Sakura that Hiragi is one of Bafurin's 4 devas, which are generals that act as captains for a class for all 3 years. Sakura thinks that they are the first platoon under the generals, but Nairi informs him that there are 4 squads under the generals: the Tamen, Jikoku, Zacho, and Komoku squads. He informs him that they are in the Tamen squad, as Hiragi orders them to split into groups of 4 and 5. He tells them that a 2nd or 3rd year will be assigned to them, and he encourages them to follow their lead and learn what needs to be done. Hiragi tells Sakura and his group to follow him, but Sakura is adamant about going because he doesn't know where they are going. Hiragi informs him that they'll be patrolling the town. While they are patrolling, Sakura wonders why Tsujishita is in his group, and Hiragi informs him that Yumemiya asked him to keep a close eye on both of them. Hiragi figures out that Tsujishita and Sakura already had a brawl, but Sakura informs him that it was Tsujishita who threw the first punch. Things get tense and Hiragi comes between them and tells them to walk opposite ways to avoid conflict. Sakura is bored because they're just walking instead of defending their town against would-be intruders. Hiragi informs him that they would be going on the offensive if they do that, and he advises Sakura to see the importance of their walk. He informs Sakura that they can scare smaller gangs away while walking with their uniforms, and if they do get into a fight, it would be defensive because they don't need to make the first move. Sakura is bored by Hirag's babbling, but Hiragi informs him that he isn't very likable as he's just a brawl lover. Hiragi suddenly notices an old man going up a service ladder and he rushes over, warning the man to come down before he hurts himself. He tells his squad to come over and help the man, and the man thanks them for their help. He informs them that his shop is always tagged whenever he paints over it, but he's glad that the occurrence is now less frequent, while Nairi is glad to provide some help. Sakura is pissed off that he has to help an old man paint a wall. They finish off the work and Hiragi informs the man that they're done, and he rewards them with steamy treats as thanks. Hiragi sympathizes with Sakura because he only has fun whenever he fights. He informs Sakura that they were once masochists like him until they found fun in helping others. They keep patrolling the streets till they stop at a train track underpass, and Sakura figures out that the bars are beyond that point. He looks at the wall art and remarks that it looks ugly, but Nairi tells him not to make such remarks because the walls have ears. He informs him that they're at the border between Bafurin and a rival team's territory. He warns Sakura not to cause any trouble beyond the train tracks because they have their own rules beyond that point. He informs him that the team that rules beyond that point are called the Lion's Head, and that they believe that strength is everything. Sakura is intrigued by their mantra, but they suddenly notice a third middle student running towards them from the Lion Head's territory. Haragi realizes the kid won't make it past the tracks in time as he slips, but Sakura and Tsujishita suddenly rush to his aid, taking down one of the Lion Heads chasing the kid. Nairi is surprised that they are interfering with things in the enemy tough, but Sakura and Tsujishita inform him that it's the enemies that are interfering since they have a Bafurin member in their turf. The other two Lion Heads, Kuruma and Erima, begin making fun of their member for being taken down with one hit. Sakura is surprised that they're making fun of their comrade, but another Lion Head suddenly walks into the scene and they're scared out of their minds. They bow as the new Lion Head informs them that he came to check things out because he saw one of their comrades was sent flying. Haragi is tense because the Lion Head's second in command, Togame, has shown up. Togame wonders what Bafurin members are doing on their turf, but he suddenly notices his comrade's body on the ground, which surprises him. Haragi informs him that their member was chasing a Bafurin member, and Togame wonders if it was Sakura and Tsujishita who took down his member. Sakura is surprised by how laid back Togame is, and he realizes that Togame is the real deal. The down member suddenly gains consciousness, and he's pissed that Bafurin members interfered with matters in their turf. He continues to rant, but Togame suddenly beats him up because he is insulted by how weak a member of the Lion's Head is. Haragi tells him to stop hurting a member of his team, but Togame informs them that he's no longer part of the Lion's Head. He informs them that only weak people lose, and the Lion's Head doesn't need someone weak. Though Suo had heard about this Lion's Head culture, he wasn't pleased to be experiencing it firsthand. Sakura informs Togame that the Lion Head's rule is lame because they claim that strength is everything. Togame wonders if Sakura is feeling high and mighty for defeating a weakling, but Sakura informs him that he's just disappointed that they're so weak. The Lion's Head members think Togame will take down Sakura for his impudence, but Togame is interested in Sakura's hair, so he lets it slide. Togame is pissed that Sakura talks so fast that he hardly hears him, so he decides to beat him at a proper venue. Nairi is panicking because he's sure that Sakura and Tsujishita's actions will lead to conflict, but Suo calms him down. Haragi takes his drugs to calm himself down, while Nairi scolds Sakura for provoking Togame because he is sure Togame would have let his kick slide otherwise. Haragi informs him that Togame wouldn't have let it slide because he's the most territorial guy in the Lion's Head. Nairi is bummed out by this, but Haragi apologizes for not moving first during the conflict. Haragi tells the others to head back to school, and he tells the third middle, Sasaki, to come with him. Sakura notices Haragi's expression when they get back to school, and he's surprised that Haragi looks so scared of reporting back to Yumemiya. He wondered what Yumemiya was like because he sounded so easygoing on the speaker. Haragi opens the door to Yumemiya's place, and everyone is surprised by the place. Haragi approaches Yumemiya, but he's so hyped by how well his eggplants are doing, he decides to barbecue them with members of the school. Sakura notices that Yumemiya behaves like an adrenaline-infused elementary school kid, and he wonders if he's strong. Haragi informs Yumemiya that they're in trouble, but Yumemiya already knows it. Sakura is surprised that Yumemiya already knows, and he wonders who Yumemiya is. Yumemiya isn't pleased that his sprouts and plots don't match, and he wonders if Haragi wants something to eat because he has a free plot. Haragi tries to inform him that he's talking about something else, but Yumemiya wonders if he wants him to grow shishito peppers. Sakura now understands why Haragi always gets stomach aches when dealing with issues relating to Yumemiya. Sakura calls Yumemiya's name regularly, which makes Tsujishita grab onto his shirt and warn him to put more respect on Yumemiya's name. The little scuffle between Tsujishita and Sakura draws Yumemiya's attention, and he notices everyone is in his garden and he wonders why. Yumemiya decides to use the opportunity to show off his plant crops to them, and he tries to make them appreciate his plants, but nobody is interested. While Suo encourages Sasaki that he'll be fine, Haragi is pissed that Yumemiya never listens to anyone. Instead, he always rants about things he likes until he's satisfied. Yumemiya is doing his best to convince them that his plants aren't just random leaves, and Sakura realizes that he seems a bit naive, just like he was on the broadcast. He recalls how his voice changed the atmosphere during his broadcast, and he wonders what attracts people to Yumemiya. Sasaki suddenly stands up, deciding to tell everyone what led to the situation he found himself in. Suo figures out that the tension on Sasaki's shoulders is too much as he begins his story. He recalls how he saw a shoplifter whom he chased down until he realized he was on the Lion's Head turf. They chased him all over the turf, and when he thought there was no hope for him to escape, Tsujishita and Sakura saved him. He apologizes for getting carried away and causing a clash with an opposition clan despite admiring the people of Bofurin. He apologizes for his actions, but Umemiya calls his name, which surprises him because he didn't think Umemiya knew his name. Umemiya thanks Sasaki to the surprise of everyone, informing him that he doesn't need to apologize since he sparked the clash accidentally while trying to save someone. Umemiya reassures him to rest easy and leave the rest for the big brothers. He then wonders how he was saved, and Sasaki informs him that Tsujishita and Sakura kicked the guy who was close to taking him down. Umemiya is so thrilled that they kicked the guy away because he knew that negotiating with them would have been fruitless. Haragi informs Umemiya that he feels ashamed that such a thing happened in his presence. Umemiya tells him not to shoulder the blame by himself because he was the one who gave him such a responsibility. Umemiya teases Haragi because his stomach is acting up, but Nairi informs Umemiya that Sakura sealed the spite with the Lion's Head clan. Sakura calls him a snitch for selling him out like that, but Umemiya wonders if he picked a fight with the Lion's Head. Sakura explains that the clan's slogan didn't sit well with him because they were beating weaklings when they claimed to be strong. Umemiya finally understands, and he's about to bring his hand down on Sakura. Sakura prepares for a fight, but Umemiya just pays him on his head, commending him for saying the right thing. Umemiya had also realized that the Lion's Head had gotten weaker, and he thanked Sasaki for protecting the members of his family. Umemiya was happy that he'd gained a reliable younger brother, and Sakura wonders why he's so relaxed by Umemiya's comment. Sakura finally understands that Umemiya makes people feel safe, that's why they follow him. He suddenly gets back to his senses, and he slaps Umemiya's hand off his head, wondering when he became his younger brother. While Tsujishita is pissed off by this, Umemiya informs Sakura that he thinks of everyone in the town as his family. Haruji suddenly gets a call from Kaji, but he's barely able to get words out of his mouth. Haruji tries to make him say something, but he doesn't get a reply on the phone. Someone using a megaphone suddenly says hello to them from below, trying to get their attention. They move closer to the wires to see Tomiyama, the leader of the Lion's Head, holding Kaji, who is unconscious. He tells Umemiya to come down to meet him so they can fight till they can't move their limbs again. Nairi suddenly gets a panic attack, wondering why the leader of the Lion's Head was on their turf. He was scared that an all-out war was about to break loose, but Sakura was hyped that someone stronger than Togame was standing in front of him. He suddenly feels an energy surge as Umemiya passes him by, and he wonders what is going on. Umemiya wears his jacket and heads downstairs with Sakura and Haruji following him. Nairi is surprised that everyone is heading downstairs hurriedly except him, and he begs them to wait for him. Umemiya arrives downstairs, and he tells the others to wait at the top of the stairs while he goes down to face Tomiyama. Sakura tells him he wants in on the action since it's a fight, but Umemiya informs him that he won't be repeating his instructions. Sakura tries to move his feet, but they don't obey him, and he wonders if Umemiya is still the same person that was on the roof moments ago. Umemiya walks up to Tomiyama, and he informs him that he's holding something that belongs to the Bofurin. Tomiyama wonders if he's mad about that, but Umemiya is surprised that he looks so happy. Sakura realizes that Umemiya is a monster because he smiles while facing Umemiya. Toriyama asks him for a one-on-one since they threw the first blow, and he has to retaliate in some way. Tomiyama persistently asks for a one-on-one, and while Umemiya admits that they made the first move, he isn't pleased with how much of the Bofurin Tomiyama took down just to get to him. He tells Tomiyama to call it even because of that and return to his turf. Tomiyama considers his proposal, and Nairi is surprised that he looks satisfied for a moment, but he suddenly rushes at Umemiya and lands a devastating kick. Everyone thinks Umemiya was hit for sure, but he caught Tomiyama's leg, realizing that he's still as hasty as ever. Tomiyama tells Umemiya to make his move because he's been poked, but Umemiya wonders why he wants to fight so much. Tomiyama informs Umemiya that he doesn't just want to fight, but he wants to take him as his prize. He recalls how his life became boring once he became the head of the Lion's Head, unlike Umemiya, who always seemed to have fun. Tomiyama doesn't like how unfair that is, so he decides to take Umemiya and the whole of Bofurin for himself. Nairi is shocked by Tomiyama's ridiculous offer, but Umemiya realizes how tough life has been for Tomiyama. The other members of the Lion's Head suddenly arrive, wondering what nonsense Umemiya was spilling to their leader. Tomiyama wonders what they're doing there, and Togame informs him that it's not satisfactory for the leader to charge in alone. He teases Tomiyama for charging out without allowing him to finish his story, but they suddenly spot Sakura, and they exchange not-so-pleasant greetings. Yumamiya tries to scold Sakura for disobeying his orders to stand back, but Sakura isn't having any of it because he doesn't like anyone being surrounded while standing alone. Tomiyama tries to convince Togame and the rest of the Lion's Head to stand back because he's going to fight one-on-one. Togame informs him that he's not in the right environment for a one-on-one as he points out the other Furin students in the building. While Nairi is scared that things will go sour very soon, Yumamiya orders the students not to move a muscle. He walks up to Tomiyama, accepting his request for a 1v1 if he gets his members to stand back. Tomiyama gladly accepts his condition, but Togame concludes that Yumamiya is a wuss for not letting an all-out war break loose. Tsujishita warns Togame not to talk to Yumamiya like that, but one of the Lion's Head notices that he's the one who took down one of their members during the earlier scuffle. Suo notes that the cute Lion's Head talks with the voice of a 12-year-old despite having the face of an adult. The Lion's Head is pissed by this, but Togame calms them down. He advises Tomiyama to duel against Yumamiya another day because he won't get a good look at Yumamiya's face when he's punching it since it will soon be dark. Tomiyama realizes that everyone is in on the fight, and he proposes that they make an event where they all go one-on-one against each other. Togame likes this idea, and he tells Tomiyama to invite the Bofurins to their place for the event. They outline the participants with Tomiyama facing Yumamiya, Sakura facing Togame, one of the tunnel Lion's Heads facing Tsujishita, and the last Lion's Head facing Suo. Yumamiya tells Tomiyama that the participants are sufficient, but Tomiyama tells him the more the merrier. Sakura agrees with Tomiyama, and Hiragi can't believe how insufferable the first years are. Sako suddenly comes forward from the Lion's Head and challenges Hiragi to a duel, which surprises him. Hiragi realizes that he doesn't have a choice but to fight, and Tomiyama concludes that the lineup is complete. The Bofurin squad decide to hang out, and Sasaki wonders if he should be among them. Nairi is having a breakdown, and Sakura tells him that he's overreacting. But he tells Sakura it's his fault that things turned out the way they did. Takabana serves him dinner, telling him it would calm him down if he gets something into his stomach, but he tells her he's scared that Yumamiya may lose to Tomiyama. Tsujishita is pissed that Nairi thinks so little of Yumamiya as he keeps complaining that their territory would be taken over by the Lion's Head. Takabana advises him that making a fuss won't change anything, and she reassures him that Yumamiya isn't so weak. Sakura finishes his dinner and wonders if he can go home, but Nairi informs him that Yumamiya and the rest of the squad haven't arrived yet. Sakura isn't happy that they are late despite telling them to wait. Sakura wonders why Yumamiya chose such a restaurant because he didn't like it, but Takabana is pissed that he's still complaining after clearing his plate. Suo informs him that the restaurant is a famous place in Bofurin where they usually hang out, especially before a fight. Yumamiya suddenly arrives and begins fawning over Takabana. He promises to send her some veggie sprouts during the summer when they're fully grown. Sakura wonders what is going on, and Suo explains that Takabana is one of Yumamiya's favorites. Sakura thinks Takabana is his girlfriend, but they both deny the allegations. Yumamiya claims that she's his little sister, but Takabana explains to Sakura that they grew up in the same group home, that's why Yumamiya always acts goofy around her. Sakura figures out that Yumamiya referred to Takabana as his little sister, and he wonders how old she is. She informs him that she's 16, the same age as him, which surprises him because she looks way older than 16. Tsujishita suddenly hurls a chair at him, and Sakura wonders what his problem is. Yumamiya agrees that Takabana is very mature for her age, but he warns Tsujishita to stop hurling things like that. Hiragi informs Sakura that Yumamiya adores Takabana, which will make him go berserk if she's ever in danger. Yumamiya takes a bite from his dinner, and he commends Takabana for still being the best chef in Japan. She tells him to have proper manners and keep quiet while eating. Hiragi is going down memory lane, and Yumamiya realizes that he's not eating his dinner. Hiragi admits that he was thinking about how the Lion's Head used to be, and Sakura wonders if they were different in the past. Hiragi explains that the Lion's Heads were devotees of strength who solely sought strength in fighting. Though most of them were hit-headed, they weren't the type that chased after middle school kids just to hurt them. Hiragi recalls a time when they had an all-out brawl with the Lion's Head, and he remembered that the fighting felt good in a strange way. Once Tomiyama took over, rumors started spreading of unethical events the Lion's Head was now involved in. Hiragi wasn't surprised by the day's events because he had heard of past events where the Lion's Head picked a fight with someone else unprovoked. Hiragi remembers that Tomiyama and Togame once cared for their squad, and he wonders how things changed so much recently. Yumamiya informs him that the answer lies in Tomiyama, and he promises to find out more when they talk tomorrow. Sakura reminds him that they're going to fight, not talk, but Yumamiya enlightens him, telling him that a conversion is a fight and the fists are a language. Yumemiya asks for seconds, but Takabana informs him that it's too late for that. Everyone exits the restaurant and Yumemiya charges everyone to be punctual the following day. Sasaki decides to use the golden opportunity to thank everyone for saving him, and he tells them his hope is on them the following day. While everyone is assuring Sasaki that everything will be alright, Sakura confesses that he isn't fighting for him. Takabana calls him out to correct him and Sakura gives the right response, saying Sasaki should leave everything to them. They leave the restaurant and Sakura ponders over Yumemiya's words about fists being a language because he never thought of it like that previously. The next day, they gather at the boundary and enter into the lion's head turf. Sakura felt even more confident that he wouldn't lose because he'd never fought for someone like this before. Tomiyama welcomes Yumemiya into their turf and Yumemiya informs him that they're ready for action. Tomiyama welcomes Yumemiya and the Furin squad to their turf, and Yumemiya gladly walks in with the others. Tomiyama hurriedly leads the way into their turf, and they all follow him. Togame tries to calm Tomiyama down to reduce his enthusiasm and stop him from running so fast, but Tomiyama is in his world. Sakura cautiously watches the surroundings, expecting to get jumped by the members of the Lion's Head because he doesn't feel safe on their turf. He notices that their turf is filled with pubs and Nairi informs him that their turf is the largest pub district among the districts. He informs them that the district gets pretty busy at night, but dodgy people also emerge to carry out shady activities. Sakura suddenly realizes that it's Nairi who's explaining it to him, and he wonders why he's going along with them, even when he doesn't have a duel against any of the Lion's Heads. Nairi tries to convince him that he's involved in the conflict, because he was at the scene of the first confrontation. He reminds Sakura that he's a member of Furin, and he has to protect the other members, else he won't be able to protect himself in their absence. He begs him to let him learn from them, which touches Sakura so much that he blushes. He tries to cover his emotion by turning around and indifferently telling Nairi to do what he likes, but Suo notices that he's blushing. Suo teases him about it, which makes him scream out at him. Hurigi decides to quiet him down because he's surprised that they aren't nervous about their upcoming duel against the members of the Lion's Head. Yumemiya tells him to calm down so he doesn't get a stomachache, and he reassures him that the squad is promising so he doesn't have to worry. Nairi offers to give Sakura a massage before he fights, forgetting about personal boundaries, but Sakura refuses his offer and pushes him off because he feels uncomfortable. They keep moving through the Lion's Head district when Tomiyama suddenly pops out of an alley telling them to hurry up and follow him. They follow him through the alley and then they emerge at the front of a building. Togame welcomes them all to the lair of the Lion's Head as Tomiyama waves at them enthusiastically, welcoming them in. The building is named Orion, but some letters have fallen off, leaving the building name as Ori, which surprises Sakura. They enter the building and Nairi decides to give them the history of the place the Lion's Head is now using as their base. He informs them that the Lion's Head Hangout was a movie theater named the Orion that went out of business, but they now call it Ori, which means cage, while Nairi is shaking in his boots despite not being involved in a duel. The other Furin members walk calmly into the base behind Tomiyama. Tomiyama arrives at the door leading to the main area of the base, and he opens the door, leading the fighters into the arena. There's a crowd of Lion's Head members waiting for their arrival, and they erupt in a cheer as soon as they enter. The Furin members are unfazed by the number of Lion's Head members as they cheer them up so they can start up the matchups as soon as possible. The crowd can identify most of the Furin members, but they wonder who Nairi is because he's doing his best to be invincible as he hides behind the others. Suo now understands why the Lion's Head base is called a cage, because he can see that the audience is made of beasts. Nairi loses his confidence and he begins to wonder if they'll make it back alive, but Sakura tells him to keep his head up and watch them. Tomiyama climbs up the stage and he announces the start of the duel to the amusement of the crowd. Yumemiya can't believe that Tomiyama made such a big deal out of the duel, but he informs his members that their wins or losses don't count because the main event is his duel with Tomiyama. He tries to make them feel at ease, but Sakura isn't having any of his motivational speech because he doesn't intend to lose whether it counts or not. Tsujishita isn't pleased with his tone, but Hiragi and Yumemiya are glad that Sakura is a reliable Furin member who is hungry for victory. Tomiyama enthusiastically beacons on Yumemiya so they can get down to business, but Togame calls it off because the main event should be saved for last. Arima offers to kick off the tournament because he was getting pissed by the disgusting side look Tsujishita has been sending his way. Tsujishita is on his way to the stage when Sakura suddenly stops him to remind him that they still have a score to settle. He informs Tsujishita that he won't bother trying to settle the score if he can't beat Arima convincingly. Tsujishita just looks at Sakura in a dazed state, and Sakura wonders if any of his warnings is getting through Tsujishita's thick skull. Tsujishita just scoffs, and he continues up the ramp to the stage. They both face off on the stage, and the crowd cheers for Arima to take down Tsujishita. Nairi flips through his book, looking for Arima's stats. He arrives on the page, and he realizes that Arima is a heavy hitter because he was able to break several ribs with just a single blow, which both surprises and scares him. Suo assures him that Tsujishita will be fine since he's in the same category as Arima, but Yumemiya tells them he feels sorry that Arima was out in the same league as Tsujishita. The crowd suddenly goes silent as they anticipate the start of the duel. Arima is annoyed by Tsujishita's dull eyes, but he pulls a chicken move by turning to Yumemiya and asking what is wrong with him. Tsujishita falls for his trap, and he turns towards Yumemiya thinking he's been hurt. Arima uses this opportunity to rush at him and land a punch on his jaw. He tells him never to look away in a fight, but Tsujishita suddenly grabs his arm and tells him to show him more respect. He picks him up by his head and slams him into the ground to the surprise of the spectators, but Sakura is bored because of how weak Arima turns out to be. Arima is knocked out by Tsujishita, and the audience can't believe that he was destroyed so easily. They wonder if Tsujishita is a first year because they've never seen him before. Togame suddenly puts on a serious look, while Tamiyama is elated by how tough Tsujishita turned out to be, and he commends him for this. He tries to run towards Tsujishita so they can fight, but Togame holds him back. Nairi realizes that the Lion's Head members have a few screws loose because they choose to compliment their opponents instead of showing concern for their downed member. Tsujishita walks back to Yumemiya, who welcomes him back and commends him for being quite tough because he was unharmed by Arima's punch. Nairi is amazed that Tsujishita is unharmed despite being punched by the Lion's Head One-Punch Man, but Sakura is not surprised because he's faced him before. Suo realizes that Sakura has acknowledged Tsujishita, but he tries to deny it, saying that Tsujishita only has crocodile skin and nothing more. They get into an argument while Tamiyama questions Togame, wondering how he plans to defeat Sakura. Togame is about to get up from his seat, but Tamiyama suddenly jumps up to announce the next matchup. He orders some of his members to carry Arima off the stage, but they're not enthusiastic about their order. They proceed to the stage to pick Arima up, and they drag him across it, but they realize he's too heavy, so they just dump him off the front of the stage. They're disappointed that he turned out to be such a weakling despite always talking big, and they kick him in disgust. Nairi is surprised by their action towards their member, but as they're walking back, Sakura tells them to stop running their mouths close to him. He tells them to never call themselves devotees of power because he's always embarrassed when he watches them. One of the Lion's Head members approaches Sakura menacingly, and Nairi almost jumps out of his skin when he comes close. Suo tells Sakura to save his breath because kids like that won't understand until they are defeated. One of the Lion's Head members grabs Suo's jacket, wondering if he'll grant him understanding, but Tamiyama gives him a nasty look and tells him to lay off Suo because he's not his opponent. The Lion's Head member backs off in fear, and Tamiyama's emotion suddenly changes, and he enthusiastically awaits the next match. Sakura decides to take the next match, but Suo tells him to sit down because it's his turn. Suo looks at Kanama, his opponent, and he sees him biting his nails. He tells him to do some exercises to calm his nerves, but he gets up to his feet and his fellow members cheer him on. Suo gets to his feet and tells Sakura he thought he was stupid when he came to their school and said he'll take the top spot, which makes Sakura wonder if he wants to pick a fight. Suo tells him that he's awesome because his words have a spine, and he promises to do his best to keep up with him. Sakura suddenly blushes, and he tries to hide it by telling Suo to get on the stage already. Suo and Kanama move up the stage. Sakura wonders who the guy is, and Nairi looks through his book, thinking he's talking about Kanuma, but Sakura informs him that he's talking about Suo. Nairi recalls how Suo was said to be strong from his second year, but Sakura already knows this by looking at him, and he asks Nairi if there's anything more to Suo. Nairi tells Sakura that though Suo is famous, there's no story about any opponent he's defeated, which surprises Sakura. Haragi also confesses that he doesn't know anything about Suo because he went to a different school. Yumemiya admits that he also doesn't know anything about Suo, but he understood that he was a king gentleman as soon as they met. Konama was pissed that they took down Arima, and Suo is surprised that he was showing emotion. Unlike the day under the train tracks, Kanuma tells him it's reasonable for him to be pissed because they took down his brother who has been with him all his life. Suo mocks him for only complaining when he's the victim, and he teases him for being an impatient child, which makes Sakura wonder if Suo is a nice gentleman. Tanuma loses his temper, and he rushes at Suo trying to land a punch, but Suo deftly deflects his attack to the surprise of everyone. Suo tells him to stop whining like a child and invites him into adulthood, but Tanuma is scared of attacking after realizing that Suo dabbles in some form of martial arts because of the way he moves. He decides to try to punch faster than Suo can react, but he finds himself flat on his back. He tries to punch Sui again, but Suo blocks with his legs and sends him flying. He wonders if Tanuma knows what he needs to enter adulthood, but Tanuma has had enough of his nonsense. Tanuma rushes at him again, but Suo dances around him so fast, which makes it look like he's stumbling around chasing shadows. The Lion's Head members ask him to take the match seriously because he's mocking them, but Kanuma knows he's doing his best. Unlike the audience who can do nothing but shout, Yumamiya confesses that Suo is not an ordinary gentleman, and Sakura realizes that he's just toying with a lesser opponent and making a fool of him, which isn't gentlemanly at all. Tanuma keeps trying to land a hit on Suo, but he deflects and blocks everything. Sakura confesses that he would want to unalive himself if he was in Tanuma's shoes, but he admits that he'll never be in that situation. Haragi is surprised that Suo is so emotional about his battle, and he thinks his emotion was cooked up after seeing some of the Lion's Head members, but Yumamiya informs him that Suo was influenced by someone. While Nairi figures out that Sakura influenced Suo, Suo wonders how he can get Suo to spar with him seriously. Tanuma keeps trying to land hits, but Suo blocks and counters his every move. Kanuma stays down, and the Lion's Head members mock him for not being serious, but he looks over at Tagame, and he figures out that he needs to do something. Suo realizes that he's getting an answer to his question as Tanuma suddenly gets to his feet and tries to hit Suo with a huge punch. Suo brings his foot to Tanuma's face, who stops in time to avoid getting hit. Suo informs Tanuma that he needs the imagination to grow into someone who can't be ridiculed to become an adult. He tells him he needs to turn the imagination into reality to fully mature, and he readies his punch to attack Tanuma. Tanuma begs him to hold on, but Tagame steps on the stage to stop the match so Tanuma doesn't humiliate them anymore. Tomiyama wakes up from his slumber, glad that the match is over because it bored him to sleep. He informs Tanuma that he isn't one of them anymore, and Suo walks past him, congratulating him for growing after realizing what he needs to become an adult. The Lion's Head members realize that Suo was just toying with Kanuma. They are disappointed by the match results, and they wonder how Suo got so strong. They realize that Suo is also a first year since they don't recognize him, which makes them reconsider their chances against the Furin squad because of how packed their lineup is. Suo steps off the stage with the world at his feet, and he walks back towards his seat. Yumamiya commends him for being very tough while on stage, but Suo tells him it was just another walk in the park. Nairi wondered if he was showing off some form of kung fu, but Suo wasn't sure because his master learned the style on his own. He reveals that his master called the style a mixture of many styles, and Nairi notes that Suo had a master. Hiragi points out that Suo got emotional because it was unusual, and Suo apologizes for losing his cool while on stage because he doesn't usually act like that. Suo blames Sakura for affecting his composure, but Sakura tells him to stop pointing fingers. He makes Suo promise to go all out when they duel, but Nairi calls him out for always wanting to get into a fight whenever he can. Suo realizes that Sakura is a nuisance to society, so he decides to hold his hands up and put off fighting Sakura. Sakura is pissed by Suo's description of him, and he's about to get into it with him, but Nairi calms him down. Yumamiya is glad that they have such a positive influence on each other, and he realizes the importance of external stimulation. Sakura tries to put Nairi out of the way so he can get his payback against Suo for calling him stupid. Suo can't believe Sakura is so petty, which angers Sakura even more, but Nairi continues to keep him in check. Yumamiya is convinced that they'll make a fine team, and he's pleased that his legacy will be in their hands. Meanwhile, Kanuma comes off the stage and drags Arima over to the loser's corner, and Arima finally regains consciousness. He sits up at the loser's corner, and he figures out that Kanuma lost too. Kanuma continuously mumbles, saying it's the end for both of them because they won't be accepted as Lion's Head members anymore. Meanwhile, Toriyama is itching to go against Suo after witnessing him take down Kanuma, but Tagame calls for the next matchup. Sakura is glad that it's finally his turn to get on stage, and he gets up to his feet eagerly. He's surprised when Sako suddenly gets up and points to Hiragi for their matchup. Haragi apologizes to Sakura because he has to go first, but Sakura is pissed that he has been denied his fight after 2 first years already fought. He protests this injustice, but Nairi steps in as the pacifist. Haragi figures out that Togame isn't ready to go up against Sakura just yet, so he's the one who has to step on the stage. Sakura realizes that he's telling the truth. Haragi tells Sakura it's wrong for him to face the lion's head second in command because he should be the one doing it. Sakura thinks he's insinuating that he can't win his fight against Togame, but Haragi tells him he's trusting him to win the match. Sakura tells him he doesn't need his trust because he's confident he'll win, but he wonders why Sako decided to postpone his fight with Togame. Suo figures out that Haragi previously knows Sako, and Yumamiya tells him it won't be unusual because Haragi doesn't talk about himself much. Tamiyama encourages Sako to go for the win, but Togame was surprised because he didn't expect him to opt for a duel against Haragi. He wonders if something happened between Sako and Haragi in the past, but Sako doesn't answer his question. Togame gives it up because he can't tell what Sako is thinking, but Toriyama is hyped to watch the matchup against one of Bofurin's 4 kings. They both enter the stage and Haragi notices that Sako has grown taller because it has been a while since he last saw him. He's disappointed that he joined the Lion's Head, and though he can't change that, he's confident that he'll be able to win the matchup. Toriyama tells Haragi to quit blabbing, and he announces the start of the match. Haragi gets into his fighting stance, but Sako suddenly rushes at him and starts throwing punches and kicks in a frenzy. Toriyama is engrossed with the match because he's so captivated by Sako's moves. Haragi blocks all of Sako's strikes, and as Sako tries to land a huge pick on his temple, he puts up his hand to block the strike. Everyone is surprised by Sako's attack speed, but Sako is pissed that Haragi is still looking down on him after so many years because he said he was going to win the match. Sako is disgusted by Haragi's overconfidence, and he informs him that he shed his old self a long time ago. Sako gets into his fighting stances, and he decides to introduce his new self to Haragi with his punches. He rushes at Haragi once again, and he tries to land a hit, but Haragi keeps parrying and countering his strikes. Haragi takes a huge step forward, and he tries to land a feint kick on Haragi, who was almost caught by it, but he dodges it at the last second. The Lion's Head crowd are pumped, and they cheer Sako on. Nairi is surprised that Sako can put Haragi on the ropes. Togame is also surprised by this, but Toriyama expected it because Sako is one of their top 5 members. Togame remembers that Sako has been in more fights than anyone. He recalls that Sako joined them out of desperation, but Toriyama is more surprised to find out that Sako knows more than 2 words because he hardly speaks. Togame realizes that there's some old beef between Sako and Haragi. Haragi tries to land heavy kicks and punches on Sako, but he dodges them easily, disgusted that Haragi only relies on his strength to win fights. He throws a punch at Haragi which he manages to block, but he's disappointed that Haragi hasn't improved all these years. Haragi is disappointed that he's now talkative because he's bound to bite his tongue if he engages in chit-chat during a fight. Sako is pissed by this, and he rushes at Haragi even faster. Haragi wasn't prepared for Sako's new speed, and Sako managed to land a kick that sent him flying into the wall. Sako looks at him condescendingly because he has gotten weaker, but he figures out that it was bound to happen since he hangs out with people like Yumamiya. Sakura suddenly calls out to Igari and blames him for letting Sako run his mouth. He's pissed that he's letting Sako mock them freely, and he almost runs up the stage to give Haragi a beating of his own, but Nairi holds him back. Suo figures out that Sakura is just looking out for Haragi, which makes Sakura blush. Sakura tells him he's just calling him out for letting Sako mock them, but Yumamiya tells Sakura to calm down. He tells Sako that Haragi is one of the 4 kings of Bofurin, and he's currently leading a team named Tamon. Haragi suddenly gets back to his feet, and he lets out a few cracks because it has been a while since he's been kicked like that. He bunches up a Superman punch, which he aims at Sako, but Sako gets out of the way and punches the ground. Haragi apologizes for showing his pathetic side, and he admits that Sako has gotten much stronger. Yumamiya informs Sako that the other name for Haragi's group is Bishamonten, which is the god of war that controls the battlefield. Haragi is embarrassed that a first year yelled at him, and he knows no medicine will cure him from such an embarrassment, but he is hyped because the duel was getting fun. In the past, Sako was getting bullied by other students who mocked him for being witty, but Haragi came to his aid. The two are now locked in an all-out brawl as they exchange punches and kicks. The Lion's Head spectators are hyped that they get to witness such a duel. Sakura is surprised by how strong Haragi is, and Suo tells him it's no surprise because the title of the king of Bafurin isn't just for decoration. Sakura wanted Haragi to go all out from the beginning since he was that strong, which would have saved him the embarrassment he suffered. Suo informs Sakura that his words of inspiration may have been what Haragi needed to show off his full strength. Haragi and Sako keep exchanging punches and kicks, while Toriyama is impressed by how strong Sako is since he's able to hold his own against Haragi. While Togame agrees with Toriyama, he figures out that Haragi has the upper hand in the duel. Haragi suddenly lands a huge kick on Sako, which makes him lose his balance. He takes some time to catch his breath, but he can't just make peace with the fact that Haragi is now stronger than him. He can't figure out why Haragi is stronger than him despite hanging out with members of Bafurin and only fighting for peace. In the past, Haragi took down the bullies messing with Sako, and Sako wondered why he helped him. Haragi told him he had to intervene because they were bullying him, and he wondered if he shouldn't have come to his aid. He told Sako that he had to speak up against bullies and fight against them, or else he'd always remain a victim. He offered his hand to Sako so he could help him to his feet, but Sako took his hand and begged him to teach him how to fight. Haragi was surprised by this, but he decided to teach Sako regardless. Sako remembered that Haragi was strong back then, and though he never created his squad, people were naturally drawn towards him. Sako admired Haragi so much, and he was proud to be his follower. After Haragi graduated from high school, Sako congratulated him for graduating and getting into Bafurin. He was sure that Haragi would take the top spot in Bafurin, and he offered to help him take that spot. Though Bafurin wasn't united yet, Sako was sure that Haragi would be able to take the top spot regardless, and he was prepared to stay by his side during all this. Haragi suddenly turned back to Sako, and he informed him that he was going to be supporting Yumemiya at Bafurin, so he shouldn't follow him anymore. He explained that things wouldn't happen the way he wanted because he wasn't aiming for the top spot at Bafurin. He told Sako to find a new goal, but Sako didn't understand why Haragi suddenly changed his mind. Some years later, Haragi took down a bunch of people which impressed both Togame and Toriyama. Togame offered him a spot in their team, but Sako wondered if they had strong people on their team. Togame informed him that strong people are recognized in the team, and the stronger a person is, the higher their position in the team. Sako told him that he wasn't interested in rank because he only wanted to have other strong people to fight. Sako vowed to become stronger so he could one day make Haragi regret leaving him behind. Sako was sure he wouldn't lose to Haragi because, unlike him, he didn't play second fiddle to anyone. Instead, he devoted his time to getting stronger. Sako suddenly rushes at Haragi, who thinks he's going for a low attack, so he punches down. Sako jumps over Haragi and he tries to land a punch from behind, but Haragi catches him in the face with his foot. Sako rushes at Haragi, convinced that he won't lose against him. He fell under someone else. He tries to punch Haragi, but Haragi catches his fist, and he apologizes for not meeting Sako's expectations. Sako suddenly gets emotional and Haragi lands a punch on his gut, which makes him bend over on his knees. Sako didn't want Haragi to apologize for supporting someone else. He just didn't want him to leave him behind and tell him to find another goal. He knew Haragi was looking out for him, but he always wanted to follow him, even if he chose to follow someone else. Sako falls to the ground and Haragi stands over him, remembering when Sako vowed to follow him wherever he went. Back then, Sako was convinced that he'll take the top spot, and he vowed to follow him even after he took the top spot. The Lion's Head members can't believe Sako lost, but they now recognize Haragi's strength since he's one of the 4 kings of Bafurin. Toriyama is hyped to go against Haragi, but Togame isn't impressed with Sako's performance. He asks one of the Lion's Head members to get him off the stage, but Haragi offers to do it since nobody wants to. He carries him off the stage and drops him gently, but Togame tells him he doesn't have to be so gentle. Togame grabs Sako's jacket, but Haragi grabs his hand and tells him to deal with Sako after his duel with Sakura because he doesn't know the outcome. Togame knocks his hand off, wondering what he's talking about. Haragi advises him to stop treating his members like that because it won't make them stronger. Haragi walks back to his seat as the Bafurin members commend him for his win over Sako. He takes his seat beside Yumemiya, who commends him, but Haragi wonders if he won't ask what happened between him and Sako in the past. Yumemiya wonders if he wants to open up about it, but he tells him that's not what he meant. Yumemiya tells him he only wants to hear the story when he's ready to tell it, and Haragi is grateful. Togame is lost in memory as he stares at Sako's motionless figure on the ground. Tomiyama calls out to him to knock him back into reality, and he reminds him that he's next in line to get up on the stage. Togame apologizes for spacing out, and he gets on his feet. hyped to finally be able to let his fists greet Sakura's face. Sakura is also grateful that he doesn't have to wait any longer before facing Togame. The Lion's Head members suddenly erupt in a deafening cheer as they're hyped to watch their deputy leader beat the living daylight out of a first year. Nairi is worried because the crowd has never cheered like this before, but Sakura Kami jumps on the stage, forsaking the long route of taking the stairs. Nairi begs him to be careful, while the other encourages him not to put their name to shame. Yumemiya especially tells him to have a long conversation, and Sakura recalls Yumemiya describing fights as conversations. Though Sakura doesn't fully understand what Yumemiya means, he confesses to himself that he's not only excited when he fights strong people. Other emotions also welled up that he doesn't know how to categorize, but he remembers his promise to Sasaki, so he decides to hold his head high. Togame walks up to him on the stage, and Sakura tells him they should get things going, but Togame tells him not to be in a rush to get his cheeks handed to him. Togame advises him that being too hasty will be unsatisfactory to him because he wants to enjoy his time with Sakura. They both take their fighting stances, and they feel out each other. Sakura decides to make the first move by going for a punch, but Togame dodges it and tackles him to the ground. He almost lands a devastating punch on Sakura while he's down, but Sakura interrupts his punch with his foot, and he uses the momentum to regain his feet. Sakura shakes off the surprise of Togame's counterattack, and he prepares for his next attack. Hiragi realized that Sakura was pretty skilled in the few days he's watched him, but he didn't fancy his odds against Togame, who was a top Lion's Head that believed strength is everything. Sakura teases Togame for moving pretty fast despite saying he wants to take his time, but Togame is disappointed in Sakura for considering his initial speed fast. Togame informs him that he's going slow so they can enjoy their time together, and Sakura is pleased they get to hang out for a long time. Togame suddenly rushes at Sakura and he tries punching and tackling him, but Sakura sees through his attacks and he counters them, getting out of Togame's grip. Togame tries tackling him again multiple times using the same attack pattern, but Sakura gets out of the way each time. Sakura is getting flustered by Togame's relentless attacks, and Togame notices this, so he keeps up the pressure against Sakura. Nairi realizes that Sakura is in a bad position because he's using every fiber in his body to dodge Togame's attacks. Yumemiya explains that it's understandable because Togame has been at the top of the Lion's Heads with Tomiyama, which sets him apart from the previous Lion's Head which they defeated. Yumemiya was confident that Sakura knew this, so he wouldn't underestimate Togame. Togame suddenly lunges at Sakura, who jumps into the air and lands a reverse air kick. While Nairi is hyped that Sakura landed a hit, Togame recovers from the attack and catches Sakura's foot. He slams him into the ground with his foot, glad that he has gotten used to his attack patterns so their fight won't be boring. He tries to stump Sakura, but he gets out of the way to protect his head. Togame reminds Sakura of his insult under the train tunnel, and he informs Sakura that the insult got under his skin. Togame tries to stump Sakura continuously, but he rolls around dodging the stumps. Sakura suddenly tries to tackle Togame, but he doesn't use enough power, which allows Togame to absorb his momentum and slam his face into the ground, which makes the crowd erupt. They all cheer Togame on to knock out Sakura, while Niri is scared that Sakura will lose. Togame raises Sakura's limp body, surprised that he's already knocked out. He's disappointed that Sakura turned out to be lamer than him, and he informs Sakura that only strong people can get away with running their mouths confidently and trying to act cool. Togame makes fun of him by saying he can only run his mouth because he knows the rest of the Bofurin members are behind him. He mocks Sakura because he would be nothing without them, but Sakura suddenly snaps back into consciousness and tries to punch Togame. Togame dodges the attack, and he scolds Sakura for being rude and not letting him finish his speech. Sakura breaks free from Togame's hold, and he tells him he's nothing without his strength as he lands a double overhead kick that drops Togame to his knees. Sakura informs Togame that he won't ever go down to him if he's of the view that he's someone who relies on other people to prove his strength. Sakura makes a silent vow to change his impression, and he attacks Togame with a powerful kick that he blocks. Togame goes back to his tackling technique, but Sakura counters him with kicks, which worries the Lion's Head crowd as they watch their leader being disgraced. They're surprised that Sakura's attack pattern suddenly changed. Nairi didn't expect Sakura to be this string, as he chases down Togame, wondering why he's playing cat and mouse instead of standing his ground and exchanging blows. He informs Togame that if he loses, it would prove to the Lion's Head members that he was wrong, as he lands a clean uppercut that sends Togame flying. Togame regains his balance and he tells Sakura not to push his luck as he suddenly runs at him and lands a body kick. That knocks the breath out of Sakura and knocks him to the ground. While Sakura is gasping for air, Togame tells him he doesn't know anything about the lion's head because they're all aiming to become better versions of themselves. Togame explains that that's what believing in strength means to the lion's head members, while the Bofurins are just plain hero. Togame stumps Sakura's head to prove that their strength is different, and the lion's head crowd is sure that he won't be getting back up, so they cheer for Togame. Nairi is convinced that he's out too, but Suo points out that Sakura is still in the game. Sakura starts pushing against Togame's foot, and he informs him that his actions don't match his words about strength. He suggests that they should name themselves the Bully Club because they only beat up people who already lost and chase high schoolers around. Sakura's strength fails him, and he falls back down to his feet. Togame lands a massive stump on Sakura's head, but he turns out he misses intentionally. He tells Sakura he doesn't understand what he's saying about chasing middle schoolers around, but then he figures it out. He realizes that was why Bofurin members were on their turf that day, so he excuses himself from the fight so he can ask Arima and Kanema what they were doing that day. Kanema confesses that they met a high schooler. They didn't know, so they decided to play with him. Arima tries to shift the blame, but Togame doesn't give them a chance because he stuffs their faces with his feet, knocking them out. He keeps punching them to instill discipline into their subconscious, after which he takes away their lion's head jackets to the surprise of everyone. Toriyama tells him to save the discipline for later and get back to the fight while it's still hot and tensions are high. Togame leaves the jackets and he gets back on stage, apologizing to Sakura for keeping him waiting and thanking him for being patient. Togame is ready to continue the fight with Sakura, and Sakura prepares himself to get back into the brawl. In the past, Togame was involved in a fight against Lion's Head members where they were going at him 4v1. Togame managed to take them all down, but more Lion's Head members showed up, which made him feel overwhelmed. Tomiyama suddenly commended him for being strong and taking down all the Lion's Head members on his own. Tomiyama suddenly leapt down to Togame's level and Togame prepared to face him. Tomiyama tried to convince Togame to join their squad, and he was surprised by his offer. Tomiyama introduced the group to Togame as the Lion's Head, and he informed him that he was a recruit to the squad, but he loved it. He tried to convince Togame that he'd love being in the squad, but Togame was overwhelmed by all the information, so he told Tomiyama to slow down. Tomiyama grabbed his arm and told him to follow along so he could introduce him to everyone. Togame was taken in by Tomiyama's smile, so he followed him to the Lion's Head headquarters. That was the day Togame first met Tomiyama, and they became best of friends ever since, always enjoying each other's company. Tomiyama was sitting alone in the Lion's Head base one day when he suddenly decided to go up to the roof to meet Togame, who was relaxing. He asked Togame if he knew what it meant to believe that strength is everything, and Togame told him he knew what he meant because he heard it the first day he was taken into the squad. Tomiyama decided to explain it anyway, and he told Togame it meant not giving up on anyone and making a vow to assert oneself. Togame was impressed by Tomiyama's listening skills, but Tomiyama was enchanted with the idea that strength is freeing. The Lion's Head were impressed with their recruits after they heard that they defeated a rival group all by themselves, which made them the talk of the town. One day Tomiyama and Togame returned to their squad headquarters with the handkerchief of a lion's head that was taken by rivals. The Lion's Head couldn't believe they went to retrieve it, but Tomiyama was aiming to be the freest guy, so he wasn't planning to lose to anyone. The Lion's Head members didn't understand what Tomiyama was talking about, and Togame reminded them of the day they said the strongest man is the freest man. Tomiyama informed them that he was racing with Togame to see who could achieve the title of being the freest guy. The Lion's Head members were dumbfounded by this, but Tomiyama encouraged them to join the race to become the strongest member. Togame remembers that Tomiyama was strong in the past, and he embodied the squad's philosophy. Though Togame wasn't good at dealing with people, he always felt at home when he was with Tomiyama because it was fun to hang around him. Back then, Togame felt it would make the team better if Tomiyama became the leader. One day, Togame comes out of the team's headquarters and he looks around for Tomiyama. He noticed him sitting on the roof and he called out to him, but Tomiyama already knew that he was now the leader of the Lion's Head. He realized that the leader should be the strongest and the freest among the group, and Togame agreed. Tomiyama informed him that it wouldn't be lonely, so he proposed that the whole team get as strong as him so no one gets bullied because they're weak. Togame was glad that Tamiyama wanted to train up the team, and he decided to go back inside and inform the team. Lion's head members suddenly came running, informing them that one of their team members was attacked by the rival squad. Togame was surprised that the rivals still had the nerve to attack their members, and he told Tamiyama they needed to get revenge on them, but Tamiyama had other ideas. He jumped down from the roof and he attacked the Lion's head member, who was hurt to the surprise of everyone. He was disappointed that the Lion's head member had the gall to come back after being beaten by a rival squad. He told the hurt Lion's head member that he would never be free, and he took the Lion's head jacket off the member. He informed him that weak people don't belong in the Lion's head, but Togame shared a different view. Tamiyama reminded him that he was the leader because he was the strongest, and he told him to get out of the Lion's head if he was going to abide by his rules. Togame decided to let everyone know the new rules, and he informed Tamiyama that he would take care of the jumpers. He asked Tamiyama to promise that he would keep smiling with everyone because he wanted to preserve the Lion's head. He decided to stain his image that day until the day there was a change in the way things were being done in the squad. Togame charges at Sakura, who dodges and lands a kick on his abdomen, making him stumble. The Lion's head can't believe what's unfolding in front of their eyes. Sakura realizes that Togame is holding back and Togame tries to argue, but Sakura shuts him down by saying he's not dodging his kicks or trying to hit him. Sakura wonders what he's trying to achieve by holding back. Togame looks over at Tamiyama and begins to question his motives, wondering what he's trying to prove by holding back. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.